hours, protesters will take part in a No Kings protest here in New Orleans. This is one of several in Louisiana and across the country, reportedly meant to showcase disapproval of the Trump administration. Today's rally includes a parade that will start at Mandeville and Decatur Streets and end at Washington Square Park on Elysian Fields. The rally will include several local speakers and bands. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill said the First Amendment guarantees the right to peaceful assemble, not anarchy, vandalism, or rioting. She said she'll prosecute criminal actions, and the FBI's New Orleans field office said it will investigate any individuals inciting violence. Across the U.S., cities are stepping up security ahead of those planned protests and rallies. ICE raids and the Trump administration's crackdown on people living illegally in the U.S. triggered unrest in Los Angeles and in other cities. There are more than 2,000 protests planned across all 50 states.